Hi guys, welcome back to the Try Time podcast. I'm Matt and I am on my own today for what is a very different video. Now, we all know how much we like to look at the fun side of rugby on this podcast, but this is potentially the most serious episode that we've had yet, certainly that I've been involved in. And as we are all aware, there has been a report of a racial incident between Wigan forward Tony Clubb and Hull FC's Savelio. Now, this is nearly a week after the incident that I'm recording this, and I wanted to give myself time and everyone involved time to make their statements, to make an informed video about this and also what the RFL have done. And a week later, and I still don't really know what I actually want to say about the incident. So, I might as well start from the beginning, and Andre Savelio's initial tweet that he posted on the 29th after the match with his effective racial accusation towards Clubb. I think it's fair to say that this looks pretty bad. I've seen a few people argue that this isn't racist, and I'm sorry, it just is. If you do not find this racist, this means one of two things. Actually, one of three. Number one, you actively take part in EDL rallies and probably have a bald-shaved head. Number two, you probably accidentally say a few racist remarks without realising it. Or three, you are really just trying to be controversial and on the wrong side of things for fun. Polynesia is effectively not a race in itself. Well, it is, but a heritage is the word I want. And to use that heritage in a derogatory comment is pure and simple racism. Now, I've seen all sorts of absolute brilliant comments on this. Oh, why is you Welsh not considered racist? I'm obviously implying that there's the C word on the end of that, but I'm going to keep this, from the point of view of my language anyway, clean and correct. Well, the big difference there is Wales is not a race, it's a country, so that instantly would not be racism, it would be xenophobia, but again, the well-educated community of Facebook don't seem to recognise that that's a different thing. But regardless, I'm going to move on away from Savelio's initial comment now and onto what Adrianlam's post-match statement was. Now, I am going to try and do this chronologically, but I will probably have to detour for a few points. And he basically said a lot of the right generic things at this point. The club would go through internal processes, they'd wait for the RFL to make their decision. It was very much one of those statements that he said the right things, he's not really given much away, and to be quite honest, he probably didn't know a huge amount of the incident, particularly at the time this interview took place. I mean, this was straight after the match, so you can imagine that actually there wasn't a huge amount of knowledge at the time other than what was being reported, which, yeah, it wasn't exactly pretty, was it? Now, I'm not going to go into the Wigan and Hull joint statement because I feel like that this is now largely irrelevant, and I'm going to get onto instead the RFL's punishment. 8-match ban, £500 fine. Wigan have had their coach and players give a lot of testimonies against Clubb for Clubb saying that he's not a racist and appealing on good character, which I do understand why they've done it if that's what they genuinely believe, but I don't know, I kind of feel like it shouldn't really matter what your history is if you are making comments like that. But I'm going to save my thoughts on the punishment itself for a bit further down the line, so I'll come back to that. But anyway, Wigan have issued a further 2-week wage fine and enrolled him in some training course or something, probably some racial awareness things. Now, Actually, I'm quite glad I waited a week, because as of recording this video, literally, it might be yesterday evening, the summary of player submissions on the charge evidence was released. And this is effectively, for the first time, Mr. Clubb's side of the story, in which, again, there's a image of this on the screen now for you to read through. There's quite a lot of expletives in here, which I imagine is pretty standard mind games and slugging it out between the players on the pitch. This will be nothing out of the ordinary. They will fire swear words and insults at each other all match, trying to get a reaction. Get your opponent's man sent off, and you've got the advantage. That sort of vibe. Now, a lot of things I'm seeing here, this is regarding Clubb saying to Savelio that he is from Warrington, not Polynesian, because of course we all say it in terms of our rugby league signings, you need a big South Sea Island forward to come and destroy, to be a destroyer in the pack. There's a reputation in rugby league that some of the biggest, the strongest, the most destructive forwards, a lot of them are Polynesian descent, which, you know, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And in theory, if this account is true rather than Savelio's, which if you look at the two side by side as they are on the screen now, you will see that there's a big difference in terms of how Polynesian is used. This paints a completely different light on the situation. Now, before I get to this, yes, it is still very ill-informed, and I'd be inclined to say that unless Savelio has mentioned something along the lines of being Polynesian and therefore being able to destroy Clubb or whatever, for him to then bring it into conversation is very ill-informed and naturally gives a racial undertone to his remark, regardless of intent. Now, given that Clubb hasn't mentioned this in his statement, I would be inclined to believe personally that it was Clubb that first brought the word Polynesia into the conversation. But again, I haven't heard the tapes, I've not got the same amount of evidence the RFL probably have, and I'm not gonna say too much about what I think of both players at this point, because I'm gonna leave that for you to make your own minds up. But let's just actually get on to the punishment and whether or not it is suitable. This is probably going to, in fact I'm going to do this on both sides, whether you believe Savelio's account, Clubb's account, or somewhere in the middle. If we believe that Savelio is telling the truth and Tony Clubb made a racial remark on the pitch, let's first of all dive into the 8 games, which I think, well, the last time we saw a verbal 8 game ban that I can remember was Zach Hardacre calling the match official a homophobic slur, and here's a hint. It rhymes with maggot and is used in the second verse of the Pogues' Christmas song Fairy Tale of New York. You all know which word I'm referring to at this point. Now, from that sense, homophobic language, racist language, we're setting a theme here that this, if you use offensive language in the 2010s, 2020s, this modern era that we live in, you will get an 8 game ban. Now, I'm not here to cast judgment over who may be lying or whatever. In truth, my personal opinion is it's probably somewhere between the two. The fact the Clubb hasn't released a statement initially made him look rather guilty, and there will be some cynical people out there that say he took his time to fabricate his story into something that sounded somewhat reasonable of a defence to get off lighter. There'll be others that say Savelio has played the victim and made it sound worse than it is, and there's plenty of others who'll say over everyone else shouting on the pitch, one's probably just misheard the other. Savelio's heard something worse than what Clubb said, and the truth lies somewhere between both parties' stories. Now, let's talk about Tony Clubb's side. If he hasn't said anything specifically racist, like I said, it's ill-informed. It you run a very risk making any comment like that these days, especially given how easily offended a lot of people are or are perceived to be nowadays. If that is all he has said, does 8 games and £500 for an ill-informed, uneducated comment seem fair? I'd argue it seems a lot more fair than what we were looking at for full-on racist abuse. There's an argument, is 8 games too harsh for that? But again, I feel like whatever you believe, there are holes that you're having to slightly plug with logic. But that's the next argument. And if it's somewhere in the middle, are you probably best going with the homophobia / UEFA precedent and letting the club determine exactly what they should do? Because I mean, I was prepared to record this video before the club statement came out and basically attack the RFL for this and saying that they should have given Clubb at least a ban for the end of the season, and at 34 that would have potentially ended his career in the top flight. That's kind of the message that the RFL should have sent out if this was a cut and dry guilty case. At the time of recording, it doesn't sound like that is what's happened, so I'm quite glad that I held off these couple extra days. It casts a different light and perhaps tells the story of what the RFL were trying to deal with and weigh up here, which is a lot different from how it was first looking this time last week. Now, I'm going to leave you to make your own minds up. Let us know who you think is telling a more accurate version of events perhaps, or whether or not you, like me, think it's probably somewhere between the two. And let me know what you think about the ban, seeing all the evidence that we have now. Because it's going to start debate, is this one. Is it too harsh? Is it too lenient? Is it potentially both? Because I think that is possible still. So, thank you for tuning into my rant / thought / brainstorm about the whole incident. If you want to see more videos like this where me or Callum just kind of talk through something in rugby and kind of share our thoughts in a almost traditional podcast kind of way, then yeah, let us know. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to see more, and yeah, if you haven't already, check out our socials, link in the description. And until next time, when we'll be back for the main pod, I'll see you then. Goodbye.